implies that we are robots. If I say I want nighttime every day at sunset, sounds like a great idea until you realize that sunset today is probably 10 o'clock at night. Sunset in the middle of winter is probably 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If I go out for a bender at the weekend because all the nightclubs are open again, it's probably not nighttime for me at 3 in the morning. That's probably still party time and I'm coming back home for after drinks. So I don't think that time-based moods make sense. I like moods that are based on actions, that are based on things that we do inside the house. So let's start first of all about why this particular lighting scene is coming on with presence. First of all, let's double click in the lighting controller and see what moods we actually have. Well, straight away, it's pretty obvious why it's bright mood that's coming on. It's the only mood we have. So you can, of course, use whatever moods you want on your lighting controllers. They're freely creatable, freely configurable, entirely up to you. Me personally, I would have a everyday style mood that is maybe lights at about 50, 60% maximum. I don't like bright lights personally. Bright is for when I'm doing cleaning. I would have myself a night mood. That would be very, very low level, very dimmed lighting. And I might give myself one room specific mood. Like, I don't want to be crass on a webinar. It's not a training session. I shouldn't be crass. I'm just going to call it reading mood. And that would be like super bright so that you can see what you're reading. Then where you say what lights come on when is through this tab here, the automatic tab. And this is where operating modes first come into play. And the default rule in a lighting controller is always that any active operating mode brings on the bright mood, which is exactly what's happened. If I want different lights to come on at different periods of time, then very simply, I need to create an operating mode. I need to trigger that operating mode. And then in here, I need to create a new rule. So let's start with night. So first of all, I'm going to need an operating mode called night, which I don't have currently. So I'm going to go to operating modes. And then at the ribbon at the top, I'm going to press add operating mode. And I'm going to call it night. Once you've got that operating mode, you can either drag it out as an input, or if you press at the ribbon at the top, add output reference, it creates it as an output. So I now have an output that can be triggered for night, and that will turn on the night operating mode. For anyone wondering why it's now a separate button to create the output rather than just dragging it out, it's to give you the possibility of activating that operating mode through the app, not just through config, by using something like Automatic Designer. So I now have this operating mode on the page. I need to turn it on and off. Loads of different blocks I could do for this. I could use a status block. I could use a radio button. I could use a monoflop. I could use this, that, or the other. And there's the tickle in my throat, right on cue. However, that is a little bit overkill. For an operating mode, try and keep it as simple as possible to turn it on and off. Oh, I promise my throat will get better in a second. For me, the best function block for an operating mode is a switch block. A switch block, dead simple. It's like a light switch on a wall. It goes on and off. The reason I use a switch block rather than something like a radio button is because the house could be in more than one operating mode at once. For instance, let's say I had an operating mode called party time. It could simultaneously be party time and the kids are in bed. Two separate operating modes, they can both be active at once. So I would use a switch block. So switch block on the page, night mode, connected to Q. Q is the output that goes on or off. This switch block, I of course would give it a name. I'm going to call it night. I'd give it a category. Controls make sense. Room, I may actually want to make it a central function rather than a function limited to this one bedroom. And the other nice thing with switch blocks is you can give them an icon. So I could give it a nice, pretty night mode icon. I would also recommend making this switch block require the user interface password, because we may, this is a spoiler alert, we may be making this turn, for instance, the burglar alarm on and off. You don't want to have something that a burglar could use in the app without having to provide any kind of password. So let's put the user interface password on it. Also, we probably want it to have remnants. Remnants means that if the mini server down powers, when it powers back up, it returns to its last known state. That again makes sense. You don't want to have a power cut, power to return, and you're no longer in night mode anymore. Remnants, important on these blocks. Cool. So that is now a switch block turning on night mode. So how do we turn the switch block on? Well, you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you that this is right, this is wrong, apart from using sunset is wrong. Again, I don't like time-based actions because they're not flexible. They don't change with your lifestyle. Imagine if you start working nights. Night mode is no longer nighttime. Night mode is now daytime. Our recommendation, it always has been and it always will be, is a triple click from a switch, which you can get from RAQ on a lighting controller. So RAQ, I would make into the O to turn that switch block on. You noticed I went to O, not to TR. TR is a trigger. That means that a triple click could also turn night mode off. That again is bad, because imagine I go to bed, or rather, sorry, my fiance goes to bed earlier than me because she likes to read in bed and I stay up watching TV. She puts her book down and she triple clicks to put the house into night mode. I come up to bed. I don't realize that she's triple clicked. So I triple click. If it was on the trigger, I would have just taken night mode back off again. If it's on the O, a triple click can only ever turn night mode on. So then what should turn night mode off? Simple. Loads of options. Option number one, the alarm clock. Why don't we make it that the alarm clock turns night mode off? But you say, I don't set an alarm at the weekend. No problem. Let's have a dead man switch, in this case with a pulse at block, which will pulse at a specific time every day. Also in the reset. And then we could say I like a lion at the weekends. So at 10 a.m. every day, it pulses. The pulse at block can now also be seen in the app, so the customer could change that. We could also get really, really clever and say maybe a motion sensor being triggered in the bathroom after a certain point also turns off night mode. That can easily be done with the motion or presence input from a sensor, a schedule block, and then both of them feeding an AND block. So it has to be motion and the schedule on at a specific time, which triggers the output. Loads of options. But keep it simple, stupid. Let's keep it nice and simple. Switch block, triple click turns it on, alarm clock or pulse at a certain time turns it back off. And that then triggers this operating mode of night. So the very first thing we can do there is go back into our lighting controller, go into the automatic tab, and we could create a new rule that says that if the active operating mode is night, I want to go to the night mood on motion. Simple. So now, if we simulate this, it's currently not night mode because night mode is not active. We trigger the presence sensor and we go to bright. However, if somebody triple clicks in the bedroom, look at this, night mode is now on. And then if we trigger presence, we now go to the night mood, which is 20% brightness. Boom. So there's the first instance of an operating mode working. But this is great for all of the other rooms in the house, not so great for the master bedroom, because actually, in fact, we probably don't want the lights in the master bedroom to turn on at all when it's night mode. We want the motion sensor, the presence sensor, to be disabled during nighttime. And that is very easily done. On the lighting controller, we have an input DISP, which prevents the motion sensor or presence sensor from bringing on lights. So then what do we connect to DISP? Simple. We've already got it. We've got the night operating mode. I already showed you if you drag it out as an input. So just have that connected to DISP. And then if we are not in night mode, which you can see at the moment, not night mode, presence goes off, we trigger bright lights. If we turn night mode on, like it is now, and we trigger presence, nothing, because we have an active signal on DISP. Perfect. So there's the first start of operating modes working. The second part is, what do we actually want to happen when we go to bed and when we turn night mode on? We probably want to turn off all the lights in the house, turn off all the music in the house, maybe turn off all of the heating overrides in the house, and maybe set the burglar alarm without motion sensors. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need a simple way that we can activate every light in the house without having to go into every single lighting controller. And that is the purpose of central blocks, which I'm going to add to the central page. So the central blocks concentrate every function block of that type into one place, so that if you activate the input on the central block, it's the same as activating the input on all of the individual blocks. So we would have an audio central. I've only got the one audio player for now, but it doesn't matter. The principle's the same. You would tick all of your music zones. I would have a lighting central. And again, I would tick all of the lights in the house. I would have that's probably about it. Maybe a garage gate central if you know I had some gates. So then what do we need to trigger on these? Well, it's just the same as we do on the individual blocks. For most function blocks, there is a reset input, the R input. Reset, typically speaking, turns things off. On the garage gate overview, central block, we would probably do a trigger close because there's no reset. So then the next question is, what do we put on the reset? Now, I've seen a few times on technical support, people going, well, if I've already got this night mode, I might as well just drag that night mode out again and stick it on the resets. That makes sense, doesn't it? But no, that is bad. Please never link your operating mode to resets. The reason why, I can show you now. A reset on a function block is dominant. For nearly every function block in Loxon, the reset is dominant. What this means is that for as long as the reset is active, nothing else can work. So take a look what happens if I now turn night mode on with a triple click. So night mode is now on. You will notice that my lighting is showing as locked. That is because the reset is held on. In live view, you can see here that night mode is active, which means that the reset is held on, which means that I physically cannot do anything with this lighting. You would have just locked all of the lighting in your entire house, and the lights would not be able to turn on. Not through a switch, not through the app, not through nothing. Reset is dominant. So you shouldn't have these operating modes directly on resets. Instead, we want a pulse on that reset, just a quick bloop, just to turn it off. The way to do that is on the switch block, you have two outputs, Q on, Q off. That is a rising edge and a falling edge of that switch block. So Q on will pulse as the switch block turns on. Q off will pulse as the switch block turns back off again. So we can then link these Q ons and Q offs to two memory flags. Q on is going to be our good night pulse, and Q off is going to be our good morning pulse. And it is actually these that you want to link. So on that central page, it is actually the good night pulse that you want to link to the resets. The good night pulse that you want to link to close the garage. And also, if you do have a burglar alarm, it will be the good night pulse that you also want to link to VNM. VNM arms the burglar alarm without motion sensors. And then the good morning pulse, or very, very simply, the most simple thing to do with that is it resets the burglar alarm, i.e. it disarms it. So that's then how we get all of that global functionality happening from night mode, from good night and good morning. Simple so far. I'll save that in again. You can also, if you would like to, on the intelligent room controller, there is also an R input. So if you would like to, you could also take the good night pulse and trigger the reset input on room controllers as well with that, which will cancel any overrides you have. It won't cancel your schedule, it will just cancel overrides. Perfect. Now, if we take a look at this in the app, once that's saved in, we will now see, come on, there we go. We'll now see that night mode, where is it? I put it in central, didn't I? Night mode is currently off, which means that if presence is triggered, lights would turn on. I can triple click, and as you can see, that has activated night mode, and it's also arming the burglar alarm. Beautiful, perfect, just what we want. Presence will no longer turn lights on manually. Presence will no longer turn lights on automatically. However, if I get up for a wee in the middle of the night, I can press the switch. And because we're not holding the reset input on, you can see that the switch has indeed turned lights off in the bedroom. Now, the other thing to consider is I've gone for my midnight wee. I've got back in bed. What am I naturally going to do? Well, naturally, I'm going to triple click again because I already know that a triple click turns night mode on. So I've triple clicked again. That will turn lights off in the bedroom, but it won't turn lights off in the rest of the house because night mode is already on. The Q on pulse can't pulse again if it's already on. So I would also recommend that you take your triple click and you link it directly to your night mode pulse. And that way, even if night mode is already on, somebody can get into bed, triple click again, and it will still pulse that pulse, which will turn all the lights in the house off. So again, that whole scenario of she goes to bed before I do, and then I follow her again afterwards. And that basically in a nutshell is night mode. Pretty straightforward, really. Simple. Okay, someone's asked, rather than the motion sensor turning on lights in night mode when in night mode, what about a switch being pressed activates the lighting night mode in the room when night mode is active? Yep, you can do that, and it's fairly straightforward. All you have to do is you have these inputs on the lighting controller, T51, T52, T53, T54, T55, etc., etc., etc. Each of these is linked to a mood, meaning that when that particular input is pressed, that is the first mood that the switch goes to. So you could, if you were being clever, take input 3, which is the center part of your touch switch, which I can do by clicking show button 3 there, input 3, and I could link that to two separate, let's just move this down. I could link that to two separate AND blocks, So that one in there, that one in there. And with it, I want to compare it against night mode. So I would drag night out again twice. And on this one, I could invert night. Invert means it works the opposite way round. So this block would say that this output only goes off when the switch is pressed and it's night mode. So that would activate the input linked to night. This one, however, will only go off if the switch is pressed and it's not night mode. So that would go into the everyday mood. And there you have exactly that. The switch will now change function depending on whether it's currently night mode or not. To show you that working, simulation, lights are currently off, night mode is currently off. So we press the switch and you can see there that we've gone to everyday because it's currently not night mode. If, however, I can't double tap, that's annoying because it's set to the wrong input type. Let's just change the input type. There we go. There we go. So lights off. If, however, we triple click, you can see that night mode is now on, which means that when I press the switch again, it now goes to night mode on motion because it's changing which one of these two inputs it triggers. So that's a pretty easy addition to make. Cool. So that is night mode in a nutshell. There's nothing really more to do with it. We turn it on with a switch block. We turn it off with a pulsat or an alarm clock, whatever we want. It turns on this operating mode. In every other room than the master bedroom, or every other room other than bedrooms, in your lighting controller. Why is it stairwell light switch was the first thing that came up? Lighting controller. In your lighting controller, in every other room other than bedrooms, you create a rule that says that if it is night mode, go to night mode on motion. Simple. And there you have a fully working night operating mode. That is wonderful. So the next thing to talk about would be leaving the house. So night mode is probably the most important operating mode. The next most important is leaving the house. Leaving the house, you will typically want to do from a door that you leave from, probably in the hallway. So I'm just going to create a new page for the hall. Default room of hall. Again, we're going to have a lighting controller. Again, we're going to have a switch of some kind. We may or may not have motion sensors or presence sensors. That's really neither here nor there for the sake of showing this. So I'm just going to throw in another touch switch. That's going to be our hall switch. And again, that goes onto the lighting controller. And leaving house, in terms of its functionality, is almost identical to night mode. We have another switch block. We again trigger that switch block through a triple click. We again find some way of turning that switch block back off again. Could be a particular button on the switch, like top left, if you're not using it for anything else. It could be an NFC tag on the wall that you present your phone to. It could be an NFC code touch on the inside of the house, or it could be an NFC code touch on the outside because it also unlocks your door. I'm going to do the NFC code touch just in the hallway as an example. So I've got the NFC code touch, put it on there, and when I get access through the door, which I can get through QA, that triggers the reset. This switch block is not going to trigger the night operating mode. It's actually going to trigger an operating mode we have by default called all out. So we'd put all out onto that switch block instead. But there's one other operating mode that we're also going to want to trigger when we leave the house for the day. And this is a very, very special one. It's one that's very, very commonly forgotten. That is presence simulation. So we are also going to want to trigger the present simulation operating mode when we leave the house. The reason being is if I head back over to this hall lighting controller, our door at the front of our house has a pane of glass on it. It's a clouded over pane of glass, but it's still a pane of glass. And what I'm going to do on the lighting controller in the hall is I'm going to scroll down the parameters to this one here, use in present simulation, and I'm going to tick it. And what that means is that anytime the present simulation operating mode is active, then on this lighting controller between dusk and 11 p.m., it will randomly turn the lights on between 1 and 4 times, between 30 and 180 minutes to a random mood, therefore making it look like somebody is still at home. So that is what present simulation does. You enable it in lighting controllers and you activate the operating mode. The best way of doing that is through the same function that you are activating all out from. Again, all out, we can give a nice little symbol. And we probably also, again, want the user interface password. And everything else about all out is identical to night mode. We again use Q on and Q off. We again have memory flags. So Q on is leaving house. And then Q off is arriving home. The things that we want to happen on both of those is pretty much exactly the same. We want all of the music in the house to turn off when we leave the house. We want all of the lights to turn off. We may want the garage to actually open for us when we leave the house. No. We may want the garage to open for us when we leave the house, but then maybe after 4 minutes or 5 minutes through, say, a delayed pulse block, so maybe 5 minutes after leaving the house, maybe that's when we want to trigger for the garage and gates to all close. The burglar alarm, we want the burglar alarm to arm, including motion, so this time with the V input when we leave the house. And we want the burglar alarm to disarm when we arrive back home. Save in mini server and check that out. We now have our all out functionality. So I'm just going to wait for that to save in. I am just going to go into the app. I think there is a possibility the burglar alarm may still be armed from when I did night mode. Where is it? Where is it? It's not access. Alarm. There it is. No, it's not. Perfect. So I can't triple click on a real switch because I don't really have one. So I'm going to do live view with manual value adjustment. Go into the hallway, find this switch, triple click it. You can see present simulation and all out is now on. That means our burglar alarm is currently arming. And then I do very, very luckily have an NFC code touch right next to me that I've already added a code for. So 1, 2, 3, 4, tick. I've been granted access. The burglar alarm is disarmed. And if I take a look at that all out switch, it is now, where is it? Oh, I put it in the wrong room. I put it in the hall. The all out switch is now back off again. So that's then all out functionality. So you can see how easy it can be once you understand the principles of one, it's just copy and paste. Cool. So then the fourth operating mode to talk about then. Sorry, it's going to really annoy me. I'm going to have to put that in central. Fourth operating mode to talk about is away mode. So what's the difference between all out and away? This took us ages to define. In the end, I think we refer to the Mickey Flanagan sketch as the difference between going ah and going ah, ah. All out is when you've gone out for the day. That's when you've gone to work. You're going to be out for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever, and then you're going to arrive back home again. Away, however, which again is a default operating mode, is when you've gone for a prolonged period of time. For instance, on holiday, Now, this might not always be planned. So again, the best way to trigger away mode is generally speaking with a switch block. So let's stick a switch block on the central page. Let's call it away, and let's stick our away mode onto it. Oh, I've done it myself. I've dragged the input out, not the output. So away, add output reference, and we've stuck it on that switch block. So what does away do then? What does away do differently to all out? Well, we're going to trigger all out when we leave the house anyway by a triple click. So the burglar alarm's already going to go out, the lights are already going to turn off. So we don't need to do any of that with the away mode. Again, 2 operating modes can be active at the same time. So what then does away do? Well, for me, if I go away on holiday for a couple of weeks, the most important thing I'm going to want to happen is in all of my rooms, I probably don't want the heating on. And this is then another place where operating modes are useful, is anything that has a schedule, whether it's an alarm clock, whether it's an intelligent room controller, whether it's the schedule block itself, you can add operating modes to that schedule. So any one of these operating modes you can add to that schedule block. And you can see it actually does the away operating mode by default on the intelligent room controller. So when we're on away operating mode, it's going to have the house in building protection. So essentially the heating off. And that's then what away mode does. Another example of operating modes in schedules could be that on the alarm clock, Monday to Friday, I might have an alarm every day at 7 a.m. However, on a holiday, so this is the school holidays, I might not want an alarm. So, or I might want a different alarm. I might actually want it not to be on Monday to Friday, but on a school holiday, I want an alarm at 9 a.m. instead. Whatever. And then you just have to find a way to trigger those operating modes. Now, in terms of things like that, with like school holidays and public holidays, you probably don't want to do it in config because that's up to the end customer, the consumer, the homeowner to define that themselves. So another way that you can trigger operating modes is very simply in the app, you can use either Automatic Designer or operating times. So for Automatic Designer, I could create a rule that says during a set condition, so for instance, on a particular date, so let's say the 5th of August. So if the date is the 5th of August, that means that it is holiday. So that's another way of activating operating modes. You can do them in Automatic Designer. And then you can link whatever functionality you want to the holiday operating mode. Another way of doing it is operating times. With operating times, you can specify a particular period of time. So I could call this my Croatia holiday. And I could say that I want to go to the away operating mode, period of time that starts on the 2nd of September and ends on the 7th of September, which is when I'm going on holiday. And then automatically between those dates, it will be in the away operating mode. So that's then another way that you can do operating modes. And then the final thing that I want to show you is room-specific operating modes, like a child's bedroom, where you don't want to turn the whole house off, you just want to turn their room off. So to do that is very simple. We again have whatever functions they have in their bedroom, like say a lighting controller. Just keep it simple. They have a switch and they have some lights. So touch switch. I'm going to get really lazy now and not even name it. And they have some lights that can just be from the dimmer extension, down lights again. Boom. And all you have to do is pretty much copy the same logic you've done already. So switch block. activated by a triple click, deactivated by whatever you want, like an alarm clock, or maybe just a pulsat. Maybe it's your kids, they don't even need an alarm, they just need a pulsat block, so that by, let's face it, kids, 7 a.m. every day, the room's out of night mode. This is child night. We're going to create a separate operating mode for them. Going to add that to there. The only real difference is that we're not going to use the Q on or Q off pulse to turn all the lights and all the music and whatever else in the rest of the house off. It doesn't activate any other room other than their room. We can link them to things in their own room, but nothing outside. But maybe the Q off pulse could still deactivate the burglar alarm, for instance, because you don't want them setting the burglar alarm off when they get up in the morning to go to school. And then the other thing that you can do from that, we could still disable the presence sensor in their room when their operating mode is on, so that they're not waking up in the middle of the night by rolling over in bed. But the other additional thing that we can do by having their own operating mode is if they need to get up in the middle of the night to go to the loo, that means that they need to walk through the landing. So in the landing, and I'm actually going to do this with a real sensor, motion into there, and then I'm actually going to use a real light as an output, just put some copper lighting on. So we're going to have, again, just a bright and a nice operating mood. We're going to stick that to a nice burnt orange, just that we've got that difference. In the automatic tab, we can create a third rule. At the top of the list that says that if it is child night, we also go to night mood. So this means that the child on their way to the bathroom is going to get nice dimmed night lighting for them so it doesn't wake them up. The rest of the lights in the rest of the house can all stay as they were with any and night, but the landing and the bathroom can have this additional rule at the top of the priority list so that they get nice dimmed lighting just for them. And then again, to show that all working, I'll do it in simulation because it'd be easier. Motion on, 80%. And this is where I'm going to have to adjust the overruns as well. Just put the overruns really, really low. Oh, my lights in my room that I'm sitting in right now are starting to flash. So overrun really low, so bright, bright off. Then, kid, we triple click, activates night lighting, night child mode. This has no effect on the rest of the house. So you can see in the parents' bedroom, in the master bedroom, we're still going to bright on motion. So it has no effect in anywhere in the rest of the house. But in the landing, if they were now to walk out to the landing to go to bed, to go to the toilet, activate motion, but this time, just nice dimmed lighting for them. Tyron has asked about disabling the doorbell when child's night is on. Yep, dead simple. What you want to do is if you have, for instance, an intercom, which again, I'm just going to be nice and lazy when I do it and just actually add the function block for it. So we've got an intercom. Instead of ticking your audio players inside the intercom, don't do that. Instead, have the QB output, which is the doorbell output, into an AND block and compare that against child night and have child night inverted. So this output here will only go off if the doorbell is pressed when it is not the child night mode, and then from this AND block, you then take this AND block to your audio overview, your audio central block, to the doorbell input, which is BE. And that way, your doorbell will only make a noise if the doorbell is pressed when it is not child night mode. So the important bits there, do not link your audio players inside your intercom. Instead, use the QB output into an AND block and say that that is then AND, not child night. So inversion on the child night operating mode. And then take that into the BE input of either individual audio players, or if you want the whole house, to the BE input of the audio central block. And there we have, I would do a mic drop, but I don't have a mic. Operating modes 101. Create them to your heart's content, trigger them to your heart's content, go wild. But at the same time, please, please, please always bear in mind, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I do not like morning, afternoon, evening, late dinner operating modes with lights changing throughout the house. People do not like it. We like it as engineers. Customers hate it with a passion. It's like living in a haunted house. But other than that, I am done. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to ask on the chat, the Q&A, or if you'd like to speak to me directly, whack your hand up. I forgot to mention, actually, the one very, very important point of all of this. If you're looking at this and you're going, I don't really understand night mode still, this is why auto-config exists. I know that we all hate us using that term, but look at this. If I just go through a project with auto-config, so just a default parts list with auto-config, and then once that's loaded in, I press auto-config. Come on, don't crash on me. There we go. Boom. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Ignore, 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 ignore. Finish. Auto-config. Next, next. Check all. Next. Check all. Configure. Guess what it's going to give us on the central page? It'll give us night mode, all out mode, and away mode. The only thing it doesn't know is if you want specific night modes for specific bedrooms. So by default, it will do every bedroom triggers night mode, and every thoroughfare triggers all out. So all you have to do is amend it from there. So instead of doing it from scratch, just take this night mode and go, okay, actually it's only the master bedroom that should be able to do this. Just get rid of the other bedrooms. Simple. And then create your separate logic on those ones. All out mode, I can't leave the house through the landing, so get rid of it from there. Auto-config is a great tool. Please don't forget about it. Sorry, Nathan, I think I saw you had your hand up. Yes, you do. I'm going to open the mic for you to talk. Come on in.
Thanks, Hugh. It was to do with the lighting block and the presence input to activate the light. At my home, with the bathroom and the other lighting blocks, I would like to be able to for the lights to turn off once the lux level on the lux level, and I'm not sure how to do that when I'm just using the presence block.
That's because it's not designed in the lighting controller. The lighting controller isn't designed to do that. It's very simple to create that logic. You would just take your brightness sensor and put it through a less than block. And every time the value goes less than whatever you want, it would trigger the reset input.
Okay.
However, I can guarantee you will hate it. Because you're saying when the light drops below a certain point, do you mean the light outside or the light inside?
Basically, what's been happening, the presence gets activated first thing in the morning and the lights stay on, and then people are going in and out of the bathroom. And even though the light level is, outside has come up, the lights don't really need to be on because the presence keeps it active. The lights don't turn off.
Yep. So you most definitely do not want to use the brightness from the sensor, because think about it, that brightness is going to jump up every time you turn the lights on, which means every time you turn the lights on, you turn the lights off.
Yeah.
What you'd have to do is you would probably have to have the weather service so that you can actually get some kind of indication of what outside is doing, or even better, the weather station, because that's got a brightness sensor on it, a lux sensor. And then you would use a value from that. So for instance, you've got this sunshine value here. That's actually digital. It's on or off. And you'd probably take that and compare that against whether the lights are currently on through maybe the AQS output. So we'll do and. Oh, not add, and. So we'll do if the lights are on and there's sunshine outside, turn the lights off. However, I very, very much dislike that because that means you now cannot be turned on because it's always sunshine during the day.
Yeah.
So you'd then have to bring another condition in here and actually compare this against whether the presence sensor is still on or not. It's going to get really messy. And I don't see a neat way of you being able to do it without introducing a logic loop and annoying your family.
Yeah.
No, Tyrion, the daylight responsive lighting block is not a solution for it. That's why you can tell he's in marketing.
So yeah, I guess just reduce the presence time down. So
yeah,
that,
that's what you really need to do. You need to tweak the presence time. That's the ultimate solution.
Yeah.
The reason the reason the daylight responsive lighting block is not the correct block to use is because that's designed for hitting a certain lux level inside the room, rather than what the external lux is doing. But it's irrespective of the moods you set, so it's always going to be overriding your moods. The daylight responsive lighting controller is designed for offices. It has a specific function. To get it to work in this scenario would again be a lot of custom logic on this page of switching between a lighting controller back to daylight responsive, back to the lighting controller again, depending on whether you wanted responsive lighting or mood-based lighting. And I know this for a fact because if Melvin is on this chat, if Melvin is on this session, me and Melvin spent a good 2 hours configuring just this for a studio. It gets really messy. Not that it's impossible, but it does get messy. Cool. Any other questions? Can he use the lux level parameter on the lighting block to disable presence? That is a lot more sensible, yes. But again, you would want to use lux level from outside, not lux level from inside, because again, that means that every time you turn the lights on manually, you're going to deactivate presence, which means that presence can't prolong the light staying on, which means that when you get in the bath and you're laying still, the lights will turn off on you. And you'll then, because they've been manually turned off, you'll have to get out of the bath to turn the lights on, which will again start the whole process again. Logic loops, oh, horrible things. So again, if you're going to do something like that, use outside lux, not inside lux. Cool. Any other questions? As always, there will be a recording of this that will be available on the Online Academy, including this config file. One thing I will remember to do, again, we like to get an idea of what people would like to look at next time. So I am going to launch a poll. Please, could everybody tick what they would like to cover in the next webinar? And again, if anyone has any other topics they think would be interesting to cover, please email me or your partner coach, and we can add it to the list for the next poll. And while that poll is going, anybody got any final questions? Nope. All righty then. Well, I'll leave that going for another 30 seconds or so. But otherwise, there's nothing else from me. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board, and I'll see you again in 3 weeks. Thank you very much, guys. Oh, yeah, Pete, you're welcome. And remember, auto config does 80% of this for you. You just have to tweak it. Okay, I'll leave that running for 30 more seconds. But other than that, thank you guys and goodbye. Sorry, just saw somebody asked if it would be available to view later. Yes, it is being recorded. It will be on YouTube, and we will load it to Academy Ocean probably next week when I'm back from holiday. Yes, I did get a haircut. I got a new trim, a new fresh trim just for you guys on this webinar. Cool. I think that's everyone's votes in. Thanks very much, guys. Catch you next time.